powerful explosion rips through a mosque in Islamabad during Friday prayers, killing more than 30 people and injuring dozens more. In the Russian capital, the deputy chief of military intelligence is hospitalized after a failed assassination attempt. The lieutenant general was shot several times in the back at his home in Moscow. The hunt for his shooter is ongoing. Also, the battle for a tiny island in the Indian Ocean has become a scene of an international power struggle. The Chagos Islands are home to a strategic UK and US military base, with its sovereignty set to be returned to Mauritius. But now, the Maldives has entered the fray for ownership. We break down the politics behind it all. And could this be Yunus's last hurrah? Bangladesh is looking to push through a reciprocal tariff deal with the United States fast ahead of the country's national election. We discuss whether it's another case of interference as business leaders question why the agreement's been done behind the scenes. Hello and welcome. You're watching RT India. I'm Osama Shab, live from New Delhi. We have a packed bulletin ahead with major world developments, including our top story. And we start with the big story coming out of Pakistan. A blast inside a Shia mosque in Islamabad has reportedly killed more than 30 people and injured around 170 others. This happened at the Khadijatul Kubra Mosque in the southeast of Pakistan's capital city. The police say they are investigating the cause of this explosion. So far, no group has claimed responsibility. And the blast in Islamabad, it comes after the Pakistani military announced it had concluded its latest operation against the Balochistan Liberation Army. Local reporter Hamidullah Khan, he filed this report on the operation.
Well, in a latest statement issued by the Pakistan Army's spokesperson in ISPR, they said that the Raddul Fitna 1 operation has been completed against the Baloch Liberation Army. Raddul Fitna, in fact, stands for countering subversion against the state, and that operation continued for 5 days. And they said they have killed 216 BLA fighters in these operations. The military said that these were well-coordinated, swift, and intelligence-based operations against the militants across Balochistan. Earlier, we have seen that the military was engaged in some operations in the province on January 29, and after 2 days, on the morning of the Saturday, January 31st, there were series of attacks by hundreds of BLA fighters across the southwestern province of Balochistan. They attacked 12 cities, including the provincial capital Quetta, the port city of Gwadar, and the port of Pasni and Panjgur, and the other cities like Dalbandi, Noshki, and Mastung, Shamban. All these cities were attacked by the fighters, and they attacked the government buildings, they attacked the police stations, and apparently it looked like that they were in control of the streets. In one of such attacks in Mastung, the BLA fighters attacked the local jail, and reportedly they have released 27 of BLA fighters from there. In another attack in Noshki, they kidnapped the local deputy commissioner from his office, but later he was released. And we have seen that Pakistan's authorities, especially the Chief Minister of Balochistan, Mr. Sarfaraz Bugti, and the Interior Minister and other officials, they immediately blamed India and said that BLA is being sponsored as their proxy to fight against the state in the province of Balochistan. And then we have seen that the New Delhi immediately responded to that, and they said the allegations are baseless, and that is just an attempt to cover the failure of Pakistan government. But interestingly, we have seen that the defense minister, he appeared in the parliament while he was briefing, and that he said that the militants were using Americans' guns and night vision goggles, and that is part of the Americans' leftover in Afghanistan. The defense minister also raised a question that who was sponsoring these terrorists and why. So that is the update until now, and the Pakistan's military spokesman said that the operation, combing operation and sanitation is going on to dismantle the hideouts of BLA across Balochistan, and it will continue until the last BLA fighter is left.
America is reportedly set to bet big on Pakistan's critical mineral wealth, but 80% of those minerals are located in the breakaway region of Balochistan. Washington has announced it will invest $1.3 billion in the Reko Diq mine project as part of what the Trump administration calls Project Vault. So what exactly is Project Vault? We'll try and understand that. This entire project, it is a U.S. initiative led by the Export-Import Bank launched under the Trump administration. The project, it is aimed at securing the country's supply of critical minerals essential for defense as well as energy industries. Its end goal, it is to reduce America's dependence on foreign suppliers by building a strategic stockpile. This initiative, it is backed by $12 billion in financing from the Export-Import Bank, giving Washington the resources to invest in key mineral projects around the world. Now, let's also take a look at the strategic value of the Reko Diq mine. In fact, located in Pakistan's breakaway region of Balochistan, it is considered one of the world's largest untapped copper and gold deposits. It also holds about 15 million tons of copper and 26 million ounces of gold, with the potential to produce up to 800,000 tons of copper every year. So strategically, this mine, it could play a key role in challenging China's dominance in critical minerals, making it a major focus for international investors. The United States, it is placing a big bet on the Pakistan province, a region that is both mineral-rich as well as highly volatile. Now, despite the frequent attacks and the ongoing security challenges, Washington, it is moving forward with the investment like the Reko Diq mine, signaling a growing strategic interest in that very area. And Russia's deputy chief of military intelligence has been hospitalized after an assassination attempt in Moscow. Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev, he was shot several times in the back at his home. The Russian foreign minister, he has said that the timing is no coincidence.
There is no doubt that this terrorist attack confirmed yet again that the Zelensky regime is ready to engage in any provocation to undermine the negotiations process, and that the regime will go to any length to convince its Western sponsors to derail the process and make efforts like the United States or worse.
And we can go live to Moscow for more on this with RT's Donald Cotter. Donald, give us the details.
Well, as we just heard there, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that Ukraine is behind this attempted assassination of Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev. He said that this was a terrorist attack aimed at disrupting and sabotaging the ongoing trilateral negotiations in Abu Dhabi between the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. I mean, there has actually been already a lot of results from these negotiations. I mean, the U.S. and Russia have already announced that they're going to be restoring military-to-military dialogue. A prisoner exchange was agreed upon as well, and there's already talk between Moscow and Washington of restoring economic ties as well. So that's a lot of developments that perhaps Kiev is not so happy about in terms of the U.S. and Russia repairing their not so good relations, of course. Now, in terms of the details of what we know about the attempted assassination, the Russian investigative committee says that Alexeyev was shot multiple times in the back, and he's since been hospitalized as a result of his injuries. Let's take a listen to what exactly the investigative committee's official report had to say.
A criminal case has been opened into the attempted assassination of senior defense ministry official Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev in Moscow. According to the investigation, on February 6, 2026, an unidentified person fired several shots at the official in a Moscow apartment building and fled the scene. The victim was hospitalized. Currently, investigators and criminologists are working at the scene. Video surveillance footage is being studied, and eyewitnesses of the incident are being questioned.
So Alexeyev is clearly a high-level Russian military official. I mean, since 2020, he's been serving as the deputy to the head of the General Staff of Russia's armed forces. Since 2011, he's been the deputy to the head of military intelligence, and he's also the deputy to one of the members of Russia's negotiating team, which is participating in the negotiations in Abu Dhabi that I mentioned earlier. So if Ukraine would be wanting to assassinate any sort of military official to disrupt these negotiations, Alexeyev would definitely be towards the top of the list. And you know, so that's the case for Alexeyev. We don't really know much else right now in terms of official information from what we've heard from the investigative committee, but they are still investigating what's going on. They're looking into the CCTV footage. They're looking into investigating or questioning, rather, other witnesses that may have seen what happened to get to the bottom of who exactly carried out this attempted assassination and what exactly were the motives behind it.
All right, Donald Coulter, thank you very much for getting us all those details. The UK handling back territory from its old empire has a history of going wrong. Now, another chapter is unfolding in the Indian Ocean. After Donald Trump had raised issues surrounding London giving Mauritius sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, particularly Diego Garcia, where there is a shared military base, Washington has relinquished. But now the Maldives has issued a legal challenge.
The president spoke extensively regarding the United Kingdom's decision to cede sovereignty of the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius. The government formally submitted written objections to the UK on November 8, 2024 and January 18, 2026, expressing the rejection of this decision. Furthermore, the president noted that during a telephone call on December 15, 2025 with the British Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, he conveyed the Maldives' desire for further consultations on the matter.
Diego Garcia is the largest island in the Chagos archipelago, located next to Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. It's almost equidistant from East Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, as well as Southeast Asia. Now, the military base here, it allows the United States to conduct intelligence, surveillance, as well as reconnaissance missions across the region, also enables rapid troop aircraft as well as equipment deployment. Now, the base, it has been used by Washington for airstrikes in Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, and other regional conflict zones as well. So the UK giving Mauritius sovereignty, it has direct implications for America's military presence on Diego Garcia. Here's what is in the 2025 accord to transfer formal sovereignty of the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius. This agreement, it guaranteed a 99-year lease of the Diego Garcia base for continued US-UK military use. And right now, it's still sitting unratified in London, meaning it could waive buffer zones, allowing the likes of China to access other nearby islands. If the United States shifts from operating on a UK-controlled territory to operating on territory owned by Mauritius or the Maldives, it may increase operational risks as well as challenges regarding access of airspace and waters. So the critics argue that the US losing the island may dilute military control and open space for rivals to move in or influence local governments. And notably, last May, Washington praised the deal as historic, and more recently, Trump has called it stupid, as doubts emerge over the longevity of US presence there.
I understand that the deal Prime Minister Starmer has made, according to many, the best he could make. However, if the lease deal sometime in the future ever falls apart, or anyone threatens or endangers US operations and forces at our base, I retain the right to militarily secure and reinforce the American presence in Diego Garcia. Let it be known that I will never allow our presence on a base as important as this to ever be undermined or threatened by fake claims or environmental nonsense.
President Muizu has referred to historic, cultural, environmental and economic reasons. Now, a few things here. There's a very significant point. First of all, please note that the president of a country himself, not some lower official, is laying claim, right, to this neighboring archipelago. Now, his claim hinges on the distance of the islands from the Maldives as opposed to from Mauritius. Distance, really, Osama's never made a difference to claims. I mean, first the Portuguese, then the French, then the English, they laid claim to the islands, you know. So going by that logic, then India should be claiming Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and every country in the region which is culturally linked. But that's absurd, so that's not going to happen. Then President Muizu mentions graves etched with words in Divehi, which is the Maldivian language. Again, you know, if graves are the criteria, then the Chagossians, the natives themselves, who are now scattered across predominantly the Seychelles and Mauritius, and some of them in the UK, that is the native-born Chagossians. They have thousands of graves all over those islands, so where their ancestors of Tamil and African origin lie. So then Tamil Nadu and Africa should be laying claim from that point of view, right? So that's also absurd. And also, for you know, it's interesting to note that Divehi is also spoken in Minicoy, which belongs to Lakshadweep, India's Lakshadweep. So would President Muizu be laying claim to that? You know, so that's equally sort of unimaginable. Now, the key point. The Maldivian president himself makes this claim on the heels of President Trump's earlier utterances. This is not a coincidence, Osama. Mr. Trump's decision to hang on to Diego Garcia was not a surprise either, because Diego is located at this vantage point, as you pointed out, in the middle of an ocean. Over this ocean it sprawls China, basically. And from Diego Garcia, the United States can and will primarily monitor Chinese movements, right from the Straits of Malacca to the mouth of the Persian Gulf and to the Gulf of Aden. Now, this is the area in which crucial oil supplies move to and fro from east to west, as you know. And Diego has the added advantage, which it has always had, of being able to, you know, for the US airbase and for their bombers to quickly reach situations in the Gulf, in Iran, in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and even coasts like East Africa and Southeast Asian states. We can't forget that Mr. Muizu's key partner and most favored partner and principal of the Belt and Road initiative is China. You know, so President Muizu's utterances and the placement of his interview in an American magazine and the sudden claim to the same islands after no centuries of no claim on Chagos very clearly shows that China is behind this interview given by President Muizu, and it is primarily directed at the United States and President Trump's recent utterances.
Just days ahead of the election in Bangladesh, it has been revealed that the interim government in Dhaka, it is trying to fast-track a deal with the United States. A trade agreement on reciprocal tariffs will reportedly be signed in Washington on the 9th of February.
We have received the date, the United States said on February 9th. The agreement will be signed on that day.
Mohammed Yunus and company will reportedly put pen to paper just 3 days before the national vote in Bangladesh. For now, there is next to no clarity on what the deal will contain. Many reports say that business leaders, they have expressed concern that there has been so much secrecy surrounding this agreement. Bangladesh recently boosted its imports from the United States, with agricultural products forming the bulk of them arriving at the Chittagong port. It also comes as both India as well as China resisted opening up their sensitive farming sectors to Washington. And was this a deliberate pre-election move by the Yunus government? International affairs expert Ayanjeet Sen, he believes it was exactly that.
This has been, I think, a deliberate move from the Yunus administration, because remember, the last time when the US tariffs were levied on Bangladesh, which was a high, quite high, they managed to get it down to a certain extent. And despite that, Yunus said that there has been a deal done between the US and Bangladesh, but that deal did never become public. And till today, it's not clear as to how this is going to work out, but what I have been hearing from the US agencies is primarily the fact that Bangladesh will have to give a big thing out from their country if they have to get their exports in place as far as the garment industry is concerned, which is their main source of livelihood. And I think what will happen is primarily that they want, the US wants China out of the market in Bangladesh. And apart from that, US will also try and get into the Bangladesh market in a more vigorous manner, not just in the clothing industry itself. And I think the only thing which is going to come out of this is that the government, whichever government is elected, that particular government is going to face a lot of questions, because remember, this decision of the Yunus government has taken place without any democratic thing in place. Yeah. And it has just been done at the whims and fancies of the Yunus gang, so to say.
Threats, talks and a diplomatic tightrope. Well, negotiations to prevent a war in the west of Asia between Iran as well as the United States have now concluded. America's Department of War, it has stationed an armada within striking distance of Tehran, while the Middle Eastern nation entered the talks unable to forget Washington's past broken promises.
Iran enters diplomacy with open eyes and a steady memory of the past year. We engage in good faith and stand firm on our rights. Commitments need to be honored. Equal standing, mutual respect, and mutual interest are not rhetoric. They are a must in the pillars of a durable agreement.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has arrived in the Omani capital, Muscat, for talks with the United States over its nuclear program. Well, according to the White House, U.S. President Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are to represent the United States during the talks, while from the Iranian side, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is leading the official delegation to the talks. Well, so far as we have learned, and according to Iranian officials, the format of the talks is indirect, and the negotiations will take place indirectly. Of course, Iran has said time and again that if the United States shows sincerity during the talks, definitely the format of the talks might change to a direct form of negotiations. Well, this comes as White House spokesperson has said that while the U.S. president has a couple of options on the table towards Iran, but so far U.S. President Donald Trump remains open for diplomacy and actually tries to resolve the issue through non-military means.
Diplomacy moving forward. The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal, aside from diplomacy, as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world.
Well, this comes as the Iranian military and the IRGC have already seized 2 vessels in the Persian Gulf for smuggling fuel, and almost 1 million liters of fuel have been confiscated from the 2 vessels, and the vessels have been seized and the crew have been detained. Well, according to local IRGC commander south of the country, this shows that Iran has full control over its territorial waters, as well as the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, and also the Gulf of Oman. While it keeps a close eyes on all the developments in the region.
The IRGC Navy noticed the movement of 2 vessels involved in fuel smuggling. With a judicial order, the 2 vessels were seized within the approximate Iranian border, and more than 1 million liters of smuggled fuel of the diesel type were handed over to the National Oil Refining and Distribution Company. In this regard, 15 foreign crew members of these 2 vessels were arrested and are currently in the custody of the courts for the continuation of legal proceedings.
Well, this is not the first time that the Iranian forces seize vessels smuggling fuel in its territorial waters and also in international waters. For example, back in December, Iranian forces seized an oil tanker while it was just smuggling fuel and in the international waters. Later that month, also, the IRGC and the naval forces intercepted a foreign tanker with the aim of fueling and also smuggling fuel in that area. And this comes as the United States is building up its naval forces across the region near Iranian waters and actually the Gulf of Oman. And this has taken place, according to Americans, with the aim of what they say protecting the stability and security in the region. Of course, this has added to the tensions across the whole region, and the tensions are running high between Tehran and Washington. Of course, despite all these tensions, the two sides are now in Oman for nuclear talks after a month of stoppage of any kind of negotiations after the June 13th 12-day war, which broke out between Iran and Israel. And now, with the tensions running high, observers say that we have to wait to see what comes out of the potential meetings between the two sides in Oman. Of course, Iran has always said that definitely it is open for diplomacy, and the United States on the other side of the story has for long been pushing for a kind of a deal to be struck between the two sides that would require Tehran to stop its uranium enrichment on its soil, to cease its support for what it calls militant groups across the region, and also to cap its missile stockpiles. Of course, these terms and conditions have been rejected as unacceptable by Tehran, because Tehran says that this is not a fair negotiation, and that's only kind of imposition of the U.S. demands on Tehran, and that any kind of negotiations or durable agreement should be based on mutual interest, mutual respect, as well as equity and equal footing.
Iran is reportedly making contingency moves of its own. Local media says its Revolutionary Guards, they have deployed one of its most advanced long-range missiles at an underground base. The Khurram Sheher 4 has a range of up to 2,000 kilometers and can carry heavy warheads. A diplomatic bombshell has dropped on Downing Street, with pressure mounting on Prime Minister Keir Starmer over his handling of the Epstein files. He is reportedly facing a challenge on both sides of the political spectrum over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as the US ambassador back in 2024. Mandelson, he was later implicated for having close ties to the billionaire sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Starmer has apologized.
The victims of Epstein have lived with trauma that most of us can barely comprehend. And they've had to relive it again and again. They have seen accountability delayed and too often denied. To them, I want to say this: I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. And sorry that even now you're forced to watch this story unfold in public once again.
The UK Prime Minister looked visibly rattled as he addressed Mandelson's links in the Parliament. So much so, it appeared that he was trying to hide the fact his hands were trembling and shaking. Starmer was being pressed on whether he had knowledge of Mandelson's ties to Epstein before appointing him as ambassador to the United States. Now, new files released by the US Justice Department also claim the disgraced MP shared sensitive and official information with the late financier, with the Prime Minister saying his case now rests in the hands of the police as well as the Parliament.
However frustrating from my personal point of view that is, and it is, I will not take any step, however politically tempting, however popular, that risks justice for victims. Because this is not and must never become a political game.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories from around the world. A large-scale evacuation is underway in Morocco's northwest after dams overflowed and areas were inundated with water. One of the worst areas affected is the nation's so-called sugar hub. Some parts are now deserted as the army and the emergency services move in. The heavy rain broke a 7-year drought, but it has wrecked crops as well as devastated communities. An explosion ripped through an illegal rat hole coal mine in Meghalaya's East Jaintia Hills, killing 18 workers. Rescue teams are racing against time to free others trapped deep underground. The workers, they were crawling through narrow tunnels extracting coal when dynamite likely caused the explosion and collapse. Remember, rat hole mining's been banned nationwide since 2014 for safety risks. But those are the latest developments this hour on RT India. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.